A lot of people are excited.
I'm bored by it. I'm telling you. I'm bored by it. Yeah, I'm bored by it. I'm going to tell you why. You know, the messaging that we have put out to people over a certain age is horrific. We have basically said, hey, you know what? We kind of think if you're over a certain age, you don't really have what it takes to do the job that you're doing. That's the messaging that we've put out. So I'm bored by hearing that. I'm also bored by people saying, well, you know, it's the next generation. It's still an unknown. We can believe what we like to believe. And I love Kamala and have defended her from day one. I know she can do the job. I would have preferred my Democrats to do this not publicly and in everybody's face, because what it did was it had a sitting having to talk about this endlessly.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Leftist Losers Show, where we point out all of the losers of the left. And today I got a clip from The View for you guys where the hosts of The View just absolutely melt down over the fact that Biden has dropped out. They are extremely frustrated, or they pretend to be, that he has dropped out of the race because, you know what, they've been hyping this man his entire presidency and before his presidency as the one who will save us from the evil Donald Trump. And now that Kamala Harris might be the presumptive selector, or I should say selectee of the Democratic Party to be the next nominee for the presidential race that's coming up, they're going to start trying to ride her campaign and, hype her up. But, I don't know if they know this, but the polling numbers for Kamala Harris are worse than Joe Biden's. So I have no idea how they expect this to work out in the Democrats' favor, but they're going to hype it up anyways because they are The View. So let's go ahead and jump straight into this clip so you guys can enjoy the absolute meltdown that is the hosts of The View.
Yesterday, President Biden announced he was going to bow out of the 2024 presidential race, writing in a statement that, quote, while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. This is what everybody was asking for, and this was the decision that he made. And is everybody okay?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's the first president since 1968 to step down. I think it shows what a statesman he is. I think it shows what a patriot he is. I think it shows that he can put his country before his ego, because he had such a great record as president.
Yeah, that's the exact opposite of the situation. Biden's ego was exactly why he continued to do what he did and ran for president in the first place. The man should have never ran for president. The man should have probably stepped down from being the vice president. The gaffe started long before he started running for president, and we've been pointing him out the whole time. When he was running for president, everybody was pointing out the fact that the man's hiding in his basement and he's gaffing left and right, and nobody's showing up for his campaign. But you know what? He was the guy the machine selected to be their candidate, and so he was there. And he was all about it because for the Biden family, in fact, they're only worried about themselves and their pockets. Everything is a personal matter for them and benefiting themselves, and him and his family will extract all of the resources that they can from the United States of America to benefit themselves, and they don't care about the country. Again, if he was a real statesman and a real patriot who cared about this country, he would have stepped aside long ago to let the next generation get into positions of power to run the country. But that's the exact opposite of what he did, and he should absolutely not be commended for anything that he did as president.
I think that history will note him as one of the greatest presidents that we've had. I really do believe that. And I wasn't comfortable with the notion that people were forcing him out. I wasn't comfortable with the cannibalization that I saw in the Democratic Party.
Real quick, listen to what she just said. She was uncomfortable with them forcing him out. Yeah, he's such a statesman, for stepping aside, but she just admitted that they forced him out. Why? Because he didn't want to step aside, because it was his ego. And it was probably Jill Biden's ego, because she's probably the one running the show. So no, they're not. She's not a statesman, and it's a joke that she just contradicted herself in 30 seconds?
But I am comfortable if he made this decision with his inner circle, with Dr. Jill Biden, with his family, and decided to do it on his own.
Yeah.
The fact that he has endorsed the Vice President, Kamala Harris, to be his successor makes it even more clear to me that it's not if she's going to be the nominee, it is when she is the nominee. So
I was sad. As I've said here many times, I love Joe Biden, and I'm full of gratitude to Joe Biden today. So, Joe Biden, thank you for everything. Over 54 years of career. So I was sad, you know, in the way that when you see a champion athlete retire, leave it all on the field and walk away into the sunset, that made me sad. It gave me nostalgia. I was also mad because he's been...
Can we just talk about real quick how sad it is that Joe Biden was involved in civil service? I say that ironically. Civil service for 54 years. He was a leech on the American system for 54 years. That man hasn't contributed anything to society in that entire time. And most of the time that he was in positions of power, which they, you know, again, they quote unquote call civil service, he wasn't servicing anybody except for himself and his family. The fact that he did that for so long and made him and his family rich when they shouldn't have been rich, the fact that he ran for president a long time ago and had to drop out because he was plagiarizing speeches at that point in time, it's disgusting. These people should not be celebrated. They should be shamed and pushed out of power because all they've done is leached off the system and effectively destroyed our country and ran it into the ground. And now we're supposed to clap for them as they cling to power to the point to where they no longer remember where they are. No, it's absolutely disgusting.
Dragged relentlessly
Yes.
for 3 weeks by some people who supposedly were his friends. I hope that a lot of those donors that went out and said all sorts of things about him come back with a big check now. George Clooney, es contigo.
Yeah.
You know, I'm grateful to his staff. I am grateful to Jill Biden. They've taken a lot of incoming in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, Joe Biden, probably the real president.
A lot of attacks. They have been part of a very stable and steady administration. I will always be thankful. They took us out of the hell that was COVID, and they took us out of the hell that was Trump. For that, grateful till the end of my days.
So I am also grateful, and I thank President Biden for his decades of service, but I do push back a little on Anna and Sonny's take on the party imploding. There is room for criticism when you're talking about the biggest job in the world. And I don't think those people that are friends, even George Clooney's op-ed, was really touching and beautifully written, saying this is hard to say out loud. So a lot of those people were torn themselves. And a party, it's not a president, it's an entire party. And every election matters down that ballot as well. They were allowed to also speak up for their constituents.
And there it is, folks. That's the real issue. All the elections down ballot, all of the senators and congressmen that are also going to be running during this election are panicking because they know that Joe Biden's doing horribly. And a lot of times, it's sad to say, but a lot of times Americans just vote down ballot. If they're voting for a Republican president, they vote for Republican everything else. If they're voting for a Democrat president, they vote for Democrat everything else, which is honestly extremely deplorable, but that's just the reality of American politics. People just don't want to spend time investigating and researching the people they're voting for other than the president because that's the big flashy election. So that's the reality. That's why the Democrats are pissed off. That's why they want Biden out in the background and some of them even up in public, because the reality is a lot of them realize they're going to lose these elections and it's going to hurt them horribly. So they've been pushing. Now they're pushing for him to drop out because the optics of that debate were so terrible. They couldn't do anything else, right? That's all they had. And the reality is what she was talking about George Clooney and them not wanting to admit that Biden needed to drop out and it was hard for them to say. The reality of that is not that they don't like having to say that. They don't like having to say that because they've all been gaslighting the entire country for years. Every time somebody on the right would point out that Joe Biden's mental acuity was horrible and that his mental capacity was diminishing, they would gaslight us and tell us that he's fine. He's got a cold, or he's always had a stutter, or this, that, or the other thing. And they would give us excuse after excuse after excuse on why his gaffes were happening. And that had nothing to do with the fact that he was extremely old and that he was on the mental decline. And now that they can't do anything about it anymore, they basically have to admit that they've been lying to us this entire time. They won't say that. They won't admit that, but they know that that's how it looks to some people. And the people who are paying attention will know that they were doing that the entire time and already knew that to begin with. But that's the real reason they don't want to admit it.
Constituents. So I commend the people that took that risk and said we need to do this, because I do think that began some very hard conversations. But I will say what jumps out at me is the stark contrast in how Trump handled President Biden stepping down and how President Biden handled after Trump was, there was an attempted assassination. President Biden picked up the phone and he called the former President Trump, and he sent well wishes to the family. He right away put out unifying messages saying, you know, we're in this together. We need to tone the rhetoric down. Former President Trump jumped on Truth Social and started to berate him, has continued through this morning. Now, in any competition, when someone gets hurt and they step off the field, now they're no longer your competition. They're just someone on the sidelines. He has continued to drag President Biden in a way that, to me, shows you the difference in what we're dealing with this election.
And these people have been continually dragging Trump long before he was almost assassinated, but even after he was assassinated, they're still calling him an existential threat to democracy. They're still pushing hateful rhetoric at every chance they can, including Biden. He did as well. Just a couple days ago, made a comment in an interview that Trump was a threat to democracy, which again, we know is just their dog whistle for the Democrats and the people on the left to say that he's a threat to their power. That's what they're really talking about. Because again, they're about to have a system, they're all celebrating the fact that their elites, the rich millionaires of the Democratic Party, are going to be the ones that get to decide who their candidate is, and that no primary happened. The person who was selected democratically was Joe Biden. And since he's dropping out and they're not going to be able to hold primaries, there's no democracy to be had in the Democratic Party for this election, but they all are celebrating it, and it's disgusting. Trump is dragging Biden because Biden has been president and is supposedly still president, and his record is the one that he's going against. That is why he wants to run again, is because the Biden administration has destroyed the country. And don't forget, Kamala Harris was vice president during that entire time, and her numbers were worse than Joe Biden's in the approval polls. So it's just as relevant to drag the Biden administration right now as it was 2 weeks ago when Biden was still the nominee.
And the type of statesmanship which we haven't seen from Donald Trump ever.
Well, and listen, I think it takes character and integrity to pass the torch to the next generation and to know you've left it all on the field, but that there's someone else who could maybe do this job better. So I commend him. I said it a year ago that the history books will remember.
Yeah, we should commend Biden for holding on to power and refusing to let go of it for so long that it took him literally not knowing where he was and having potato brains and possibly not being alive anymore. That's allegedly. And the only reason I say that is because there's been no proof that he's doing okay since his supposedly drop out of the race. But it took to the point to where he literally can't function as a human being for him to let go of power. So why would we commend that? If he had dropped out 20 years ago, that would be okay. You're at a retirement age. You did your part. You're stepping back. You're letting go of power to let the next generation take over. That would be something to commend. Not holding on to it like the Mitch McConnells and Nancy Pelosi's. All these boomer generation people who just will not let go of power until the very end. That should not be commended. That should be shamed because it's disgusting, and it's why our country is falling apart. Because these people just want to stay in power so they can continue extracting resources for themselves and their friends, and it's absolutely deplorable and disgusting.
Remember him very kindly if he knows to pave the way for someone else to come up behind him. And listen, the reality was it was going to be a really big uphill battle for him if he stayed in the race. And I would look no further than the absolute meltdown that's happening on the Trump campaign right now. The messaging, since it's been pretty clear, Vice President Harris is now the Democratic nominee or soon to be, they don't know what to do with themselves. They planned a whole campaign against Joe Biden, not against a female former prosecutor, attorney general, senator, somebody who, well, she's the vice president, there are unknowns there. All their data, all their strategy was built around this man. It's a moment that I feel like people are energized. I'm just feeling something. I think a lot of folks, 6 and 10, didn't want that rematch.
Okay, can anyone that's voting Democrat, if anyone is voting Democrat is watching this, can you honestly tell me down in the comments below that you're hyped for Kamala Harris, please? If anyone's hyped for Kamala Harris, genuinely, please let me know down in the comments below. I'll tell you right now that I'm hyped for Kamala Harris, but not because I want her to be president. It's because she's definitely going to lose to Donald Trump 1,000%. Her poll numbers, her approval rating, for the entire time she's been vice president has been lower than Joe Biden. And she did so bad in the primaries when she ran against Joe Biden to be the nominee that she dropped out before anybody else. So no, Kamala Harris, there's no hype around Kamala Harris other than the hype that The View and other people like The View, other shows like The View are manufacturing. It's all manufactured hype. But of course they have to do that because they're paid off by the DNC, and this is just par for the course for them. It's sad. You know what? The one thing I will say, I genuinely hope that Joe Biden steps down as president for at least a day, for just at least a day before the next person takes over, just so Kamala Harris can be read in as president, because I would love for Wikipedia and all the other sites that kind of like list history to show that she was the first female president over Hillary Clinton. I don't want her to be the first female president or be president at all, but the reality is she's already close to it, and I think it would make me so happy to know that Hillary Clinton has to live with the fact that somebody else who was way worse than her in poll numbers was the first female president, and that she'll never be able to be that. That would make me so happy. I think, let me know in the comments down below if you feel the same way. I think that just destroying Hillary Clinton's soul that way would be absolutely fantastic. It sure would make me happy at the very least.
We lived through it in 2020. 2020 was a hellish year. Now it's like something totally different. And I'll be honest, I'm just excited.
I think a lot of people are
I'm
excited.
bored by it. I'm telling you, I'm bored by it. Yeah, I'm bored by
The girl in the blue that we were just looking at right before Whoopi was on here again, she's the supposed conservative of The View, but I don't think, out of all the clips of The View that I watch, I don't think I've ever seen her say anything that's conservative. She's extremely fake. She's paid opposition, and it's just sad. She's so excited, and then Whoopi pushes back and says, I'm bored, and her response is, wait, really? Like, she's not excited. She was told by the producers to say that. It's so stupid.
it. I'm going to tell you why. You know, the messaging that we have put out to people over a certain age is horrific. We have basically said, hey, you know what? We kind of think if you're over a certain age, you don't really have what it takes to do the job that you're doing. That's the messaging that we've put out. So I'm bored by hearing that. I'm also bored by people saying, well, you know, it's the next generation. It's still an unknown. We can believe what we like to believe in.
I think Whoopi Goldberg might just be showing her own insecurity about, aging, which is, we all have to age at some point. I can understand that. I mean, she was just the other week defending Joe Biden possibly pooping himself at the D-Day speech where he was doing the cornholio hands and squatting. And she said she had poopy days too, or something along those lines. I don't know if she was referencing that she has bad days or if she was saying that she's just surrounded by feces and wades through her own feces all the time, and it's just a normal part of her life. Maybe that is. Maybe she's just insecure about getting old, and she's just frustrated that people are upset with Joe Biden for clinging to power for too long. Who knows?
And I love Kamala and have defended her from day one. I know she can do the job. I would have preferred my Democrats to do this not publicly
Yes.
and in everybody's
I agree
face,
with that.
because what it did was it had us sitting having to talk about this endlessly and not being able to say, because we couldn't have two-way conversations about this kind of thing, with just sort of being left. So I'm bored by the oh my God, is what's going to happen? Because I know that the American people, regardless of who the nominee is going to be, it's going to be up to the people.
The one thing
And for me, that's why when I
the
said
one thing I would
it was, yeah.
I
Go
would
ahead.
say on the age thing is, like, I worked in the White House under a very different president. It was chaotic, but every single White House, like, the presidency is so different than any other job. I don't think most Americans think that if you're 80, you can't do any number of things.
No,
the
but
presidency
we've made
is
that.
uniquely challenging.
But we've made
and by
that
the way,
a point.
Donald Trump, now it's on him. Now he's the oldest presidential.
can I
I have
just-
distinguished,
Yeah.
distinguished between Joy Behar at 81 and President Biden. I've said before.
It's ironic that they're now going to start playing that card that, because Trump's old, he shouldn't be president. I mean, to be fair, I don't disagree with that sentiment. Trump is very old, but like she said, I can't disagree with her there. The age does show differently on people. Trump is spry, man. He might be old, but he is spry. I mean, the man was just shot in the head. Yes, it was his ear, but he took a headshot and immediately got back up and threw his fist in the air and then gave a 2-hour speech 3 days later, or was it 3 or 4 days later? It doesn't matter. At the RNC, like days later, with no issues. I don't think he had any gaffes. I think he misnamed the Star Wars project that Reagan was running, and he called it Spaceship or something like that. But I wouldn't even call that like a gaffe. It's just, forgetting what that program from the 80s that was a joke program anyways was. Who cares about that? 2 hours, he was just off the cuff able to give a speech, and it was great. So, I mean, I don't disagree with her talking about the age thing, but it's just, I think it's funny, man. They push the DEI thing so hard that they criticize anyone who says people aren't capable of doing a job. You look at Fetterman. I mean, Fetterman literally was mentally gone, and he's not even old. That was just a condition he had, and they still voted him into power. The left they can't help themselves. It's all about power. Biden was always just a puppet for the machine, so that way the Democrats and the uniparty Republicans could maintain power and control the system and continue to push war and everything else they need to line their pockets. And at the end of the day, that's what all of this is about. And that's why these guys on The View, these gals on The View, will keep pushing these ideas and telling you to vote blue no matter who, because at the end of the day, it lines their pockets and it keeps them in positions of power, and that's all they care about. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this clip, and it them having to live and lie in the bed that they made was enjoyable to you. I think it's funny to watch them squirm and try to wiggle their way out of every awkward position they put themselves in because they run people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to my channel in the video, and please comment down below what you thought about this. Or you know what, if you don't like my content, go ahead and tear me apart in the comments. I appreciate that as well. I will talk to you guys in the video later today, and I hope all of you have a fantastic day. Thank you.